Hello, animation fans, and welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and you're listening to episode 77. Joining me as a co-host in this podcast, but could not make the introduction, is my buddy Rick Arroyo. We were very excited to be able to talk with our guest, Wes Mandell. He has been in the animation industry for quite some time, has worked for amazing studios such as DreamWorks, PDI, ILM, Sony, BRON Animation here on the Netflix original, The Willoughbys. And he's worked on such titles as Iron Man 2, Terminator Salvation, Ice Age, The Meltdown, Madagascar 3, Megamind, one of my personal favorites. And as I mentioned, he was able to be an animation supervisor on The Willoughbys, the Netflix original. So it's just really neat to be able to talk with somebody at this high of a level who's been in the gambit from VFX to feature and to kind of just pick their brain and talk animation. So definitely check this out. All right, we ready, gentlemen?
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Warmed up. Let me stretch.
Yeah.
There you go. Stretch.
Well, first off, Wes, we do appreciate you joining us in this podcast. We got a lot of listeners throughout the whole continent and the world, and so it's always neat to kind of get people like you who, you know, maybe bounce around or certain locations and people don't get to have a chance to sit down and talk with. And so we appreciate you taking the time so our listeners can hear. So thank you so much.
You betcha.
All right. As I first started off, I was looking at your IMDb, and you've got a really, really cool roster of a lot of movies you worked on and studios that you've worked with. PDI, was it PDI at DreamWorks or SoCal?
Yeah, PDI.
PDI, Blue Sky, RealFX. You've worked on The Willoughbys, which we will get to talk about here for the Netflix original. Rock Dog, Book of Life. One of my favorites, Megamind. I saw that on there. I was like, yeah. So how did you get into animation?
Well, actually, I was a car mechanic.
Wow.
Okay, hang on, real quick. This is why I like. I hope our audiences don't get. I ask this question a lot, and that's why, because our head of animation, Jason Ryan, he was going to get into accounting, and he ends up getting into animation. Someone else gets in, and you're just like. So when I hear that, I'm like, how did you go from a car mechanic to animation?
Well, I grew up in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I was really into cars. Used to do custom paint jobs and stuff like that. So
Killer.
Yeah, I was into the lowrider scene and all of that. And I was dating a girl. I know, right?
Lowrider, Wes. I mean, we're at a whole new level. I got to check my game. Like, I'm like, am I hearing this right? This is amazing. Wes.
I had a black 85 S10 that I had it on airbag suspension so I could drag the frame. Had suicide doors.
Killer.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Right when I finished that truck, I had it for about 6 months right before I decided to move to San Francisco and be an animator. So, yeah.
Bucket list. Check.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
No, I had a girlfriend who was in graphic design, was going to University of Oklahoma, and we got to chit-chatting, and I used to paint graphics on cars, and she's like, that's pretty much what I do. And I was like, wait, you can do that as a paying job? And she was like, yeah. So I was tired. Here's the funny part. I was tired of the long hours of being a car mechanic and painting. So I decided to get an animation.
Because that's a cush job there. You don't have to worry about the long hours and stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, and then I was going to school for graphic design, and then I saw episode 1, Star Wars, and was blown away just by the CG, and decided pretty much at that moment that that's what I wanted to do. And since I was going to school for it, I was like, I went to my instructors and asked what that was and how do I do it. And at that time, CG animation was still pretty young. There was about 6 or 7 schools that I could actually go to. And all of them, because I didn't draw a whole lot, so I had to submit demo reels and portfolios. And my portfolio was full of cars, paint jobs on the cars. And Of course, I didn't get accepted to any of them except for the Academy of Art in San Francisco.
Okay.
So 6 months later, I was in San Fran.
Very cool. That's a bit of a change from Oklahoma. I've been out there, big wrestling community. So I've been out there for some the NCAAs before. So yeah. Nice. But obviously a big difference from coming out to San Francisco. How was your adjustment coming to California?
It was good. I was actually born in Hawthorne, California. So just in LA, and I had my uncle and my grandma lived out in LA, and so I'd go out there and visit and stuff. But,
okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't that big, but I was very defensive about all the Oklahoma jokes and stuff for a little while. Now I give my family a hard time.
You make it now, okay. So now, how long before getting out of school did you jump into the industry?
I started in '99. I went to started in college then, and in 2002, 2003. Me and a few buddies went down to SIGGRAPH in LA.
Okay.
And so I was in these Pixar classes. It was where some of the guys from Pixar came to the academy, would teach classes. And each class you had to do kind of like a little demo reel of your previous work to get accepted to the next class. And so I had that together on my VHS tape, dating myself a little bit here. But I had that, and my buddy was graduating, so he was looking for a job. So he talked me into just making a few demo reels, and he just submitted. He's like, "What's the worst that can happen?" So I submitted it, and we both got a apprenticeship at ILM.
Very cool.
So
nice.
2003, we showed up, shaking in our boots, and I was an apprentice before I even graduated. So
very cool.
Pretty fortunate. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Any particular artists that took you under their wings during that time?
Sean Kelly, Delio, all those guys, Glenn McIntosh.
All right.
Yeah.
Good name.
All those guys, man, they were phenomenal. Yeah. Great animators. Steve Nichols. I can just go on and on. Like all of
just
them.
Like giving shout outs on the stuff like that. That's always neat when someone gives it,
and these are cool artists that really care. Like even like in community, when like I've been tweeting a lot lately, and they're really active and they're really cool. But I'm really curious on the apprenticeship program. Like what was the jump, or like what was the experience? Like what did you really felt like you were getting from it, or like?
Yeah, it was really great. So when we started, we were in a training area, and the whole idea behind it was we were going to do these exercises, and then we'd have, professional. I mean, this is before Animation Mentor. This is way back when. And so we'd have these pros that are in the next room working on films. They would mentor us, like come over and critique our work and things of that nature. And then the movie Van Helsing started falling behind, and they needed help. So they grabbed the apprentices and gave us little bitty pay bumps, and threw us on the movie.
Very cool.
What kind of shots were they giving you? Like blinks, or like where are they?
At first we were doing motion tracking. So like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Van Helsing, but the Frankenstein had like this glowy stuff you could kind of see through his head. And so we were tracking that stuff. There's a whole bunch of bats at first that we were tracking, and started animating those guys. So it was a whole bunch of like background kind of stuff. And then as the movie went on, me, my buddy John, Scott, a handful of us started actually getting some like smaller shots. And I was petrified the whole time that they were going to figure out I was a fraud. I lived in San Francisco, and it was in San Rafael, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I do the math, and it took me longer to drive home, sleep, and come back. So I used to sleep under my desk. Because I was so afraid I was going to get fired. So scared.
That was the past, but that showed your dedication.
Nobody should do that. Nobody should have to do that.
No.
Yeah, I just had all the
the rite of passage is gone, right? You know, the hazing and the rite of passage, you know, I don't know if that still exists. I wish sometime I wish it does. But.
Yeah, makes it a little battle hardened, huh?
A little bit,
exactly.
a little bit. Yeah.
So that was some of your first work. What were you thinking during that time too? Because as you said, you know, you're getting into animation, but it's motion tracking. Were you just, hey, I'm glad to start getting my foot in the door? Or is it like, hey, I can't wait to get past this? Or what was your thought process during that?
Man, I was a sponge. I would ask 1,000 questions, and anything they gave me, I was super stoked to have. I thought going into it that it was just going to be the apprenticeship for like, I think it was 3 months or 4 months. And then I'd be out the door and, you know, I'd have to, you know, go finish school and do that whole process again. But luckily they liked my work and, you know, ended up hiring me for a bit. And my buddy John and I think Scott as well. Yeah, there was like 3 or 4 of us that got hired. My buddy Jeep as well. Yeah, there was a good handful that they ended up liking our work a lot, so we hung out.
Yeah, part of the reason. Go for it.
So really quickly, I think that's something that we haven't talked. I don't think we have talked about. Is sometime when you're an apprentice, you get in as, you know, intern or whatever. You want the big shots, or you want to prove yourself. Did you ever get angry, or did you see any of the other apprentices get angry, or did you guys knew it's like, got to keep your cool, you got to earn your dues, or you got to...
Yeah, it was more like the whole time I was always running scared. So anything they gave me, I was so petrified that they you know, see right through me and fire me.
Yeah.
So anything they gave me, I was super happy about. Like we did the motion tracking stuff for a little bit, and then we got some shots and animated and you know, a bunch of background stuff. I ended up doing like at the time I thought it was like the coolest shot in the world was where the Hellbeast transformed or Dracula transformed into the Hellbeast, and it was up on the ledge way in the back, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But yeah, no, I never got mad at anything. Everything they gave me, I was blown away that they'd even trust me with it. And of course, you know, I mean, this is back in 2003, 2002 when we were working on it, and I really couldn't believe that they were giving some kid that didn't even graduate school yet shot in a feature movie, you know, that they're paying millions of dollars, and like they're asking me to do stuff. So I was pretty blown away.
That's killer. Because one of the things, the reason why I asked that is because we've talked about in a previous podcast is just not despising small beginnings, you know, that idea of, and that's why I look at, like I said, look at your IMDb and the movies that you've worked on. And I go, I think that's a large testament to what you're talking about there, just being that sponge, willing to take it in and willing to take the shots that may not seem that big of a deal at the time, but you're wanting to grow and learn. And so,
there's no such thing as a non-important shot.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you're telling a story, and that's the biggest part of what we do is we're, you know, Jorge and I always had this little argument of what's more important to a movie. We always agree story's number one. He always said design, and I said performance, because you got to have good storytellers. And every single shot in a movie is telling a story. So even if it's just a finger turning on a switch or the clock hand moving, you know, it's telling a story. So as an animator, if you get that shot as just a clock hand moving, it's like, well, it's telling something. Is it, you know, a whole bunch of anticipation dropping, or is it like time is going really quick? Like it's telling a story.
Gotcha.
And that's what we're doing. So there's no such thing as a bad shot. So
good deal.
There's wisdom right there, everyone. I want everyone. That's gold nuggets.
I feel like I'm jumping on a soapbox here.
No, that's great.
And
though.
another thing.
Yeah. So you said that was for ILM? Okay. So how long did you stay there during that time? You said down Helsing and.
Yeah, I was there for, I think about 2.5 years, almost 2 years, I think. Something like that. Yeah. And then I went to Blue Sky after that.
Okay. What made you want to make the jump from VFX to feature type animation, or was it just the something opened up, and what was that?
Yeah, I wanted to do, I think so, all right, this is a little cheesy, but when I decided to be an animator and I started going to college, you know, my family was big Star Wars fans. My mom always said that, you know, I saw the first Star Wars because she was pregnant with me when she went and saw it.
Oh, very cool.
Which I think is kind of funny. Anyway, so we were watching episode 1, and I was deciding to go to school, and I was like, you know, and I did the math. I was like, if I really busted my ass, sorry.
Yeah, that's good. You're good.
Okay. If I really busted my butt, you know, and you know, worked really hard, maybe, just maybe I could get hired at ILM and work on the third one, you know, because the timing would line up. Yeah. And yeah, sure enough, you know, that's exactly what happened.
Very cool.
I think it was one of those, like, you set goals, and then when you achieve them, you're kind of like, well, what's next?
Okay.
And that was one of those things. Of course, in school, I gained a bigger appreciation for feature animated movies versus visual effects. Because, you know, I didn't know anything about animation. I'm not, a lot of my friends are like, oh yeah, I always want to be an animator. When I was 6, I was drawing and all that. Yeah. Like, I was not that guy. In fact, one of my buddies, Travis, every time a Marvel movie came out, I'd be like, okay, so who's this guy?
You were allowed to go to the movies with him?
I know, right?
It's like, you don't know? No, you stay in the park.
He's not with me. Yeah, he's not with me.
Come on. Yeah. I was the car guy. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I was the car guy. I was really into cars and stuff, and I wasn't into comic books or anything like that. But yeah, what were we talking about? Like,
your goals. I'm really big on goals, and I believe it's something that students should have. They should have short, mid, and long-term goals. Yeah. That was a big goal. I think. Did you have something that you, like a habit or routine, or like, you know, did you have like a poster or something that reminded you, or was it like you kept motivated, you were hungry, or it's like, what was it that you can potentially share with our audience that would like them, like, I get Wes, like, I feel the same way.
I'm a pretty logical person, so I'm very analytical, and because of that, I always analyzed things. Like when I screwed up, I get obviously a little frustrated, but I'd always like ask why. Why did I mess up? What did I do wrong here? And anything like that. So I was always, you know, like, if something didn't work, you know, I didn't just I didn't.
You didn't look at it as a failure, but you always wanted to problem solve and figure it out and make it into a learning.
Yeah, right? I never saw anything as a failure. It was always a learning experience.
Right.
I always asked why and kind of got to the bottom of it. And I think I never took it personally. And I think I was pretty fortunate now. I was in martial arts as a kid.
Oh, cool.
And my instructor always made it a point to either you're teaching or you're learning. So when we would spar and things like that, we'd never fight about our level. We'd either fight somebody above us or fight somebody below us. So either we were getting our butts kicked and learning from it, or we were teaching. It was one of the two. We were
that's a great mindset. I love that. Actually, both the Larry and I were like, now that is martial art training to the core.
Yes. What martial arts? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. It was Taekwondo, but it was like an older style. Man, it was a long time ago. It was it's like Goju-Ryu. Is that right?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah.
Taekwondo. We'll just keep it at that.
Yeah. But yeah, so whenever anything kind of didn't go my way, I'd always ask why, and then just try to analyze it from there. But I always had this crazy work ethic too. Like, you know, man, I feel like I'm dropping all this stuff. My mom always said, if when I was a kid working at Home Depot and I was mad because I wasn't getting paid enough, she was like, well, how much do you want to get paid? And I was like, $10 an hour. And she was like, well, then work like you're getting paid $10 an hour, because that's the only way you're going to get it. And I was like, and so I kind of always had that. And luckily, from my past experience, my past lives, should we say?
Life experience, yeah.
And I think that's exactly, you know, I never really complained about pay or anything like that. I just did the job.
That's great, man. That's great. So, I think, like I said, that's a large testament to looking at your roster, animation supervisor, lead animator, directing animator. I think that's just paying your dues prior that set a lot of this up. So that's really neat to hear.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
So getting into Blue Sky, what was the first one you worked on? Was that Ice Age, the Meltdown?
Yeah, Ice Age 2.
Okay. Yeah. How was that transition from VFX to feature for you?
Oh, it was hard.
Okay.
That was super hard.
Like, you had a moment. You notice the eye darts, you look down, left, thought, reflection of emotion, bringing it forward. And
tragedy.
Yeah.
And it was hard. Yeah. Right there. That's pure analysis. Just watch the video.
No, they're very different. They're very different.
What made it hard? What made it hard? What was the first challenge or obstacles that you had that you're like, oh my goodness?
I was used to like realistic animation, you know, working for ILM, everything had to, you know, look real.
Yeah.
And so I was used to these rules, you know, like this is how you shift weight. This is, you know, all of this stuff. And it was something, you know, you could pretty much like put down a checklist in a sense. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was used to. And so after doing that for 2 or 3 years and really kind of honing that in, I go to Blue Sky, and my first shot was Eddie was one of the possums. It was right after Crash slammed into a tree, and Eddie had to like yelled out Crash, and he went running after him. And so my first pass was like, you know, he did like 1 and 2 kind of hits, you know, and I did like the scapula's all going in, taking all this weight, just all this crazy stuff. And of course, I wanted
details. It's so real,
dude, so crazy. And I wanted to impress him. And Mike Thurmeyer came by, and he was like, "Yeah, no, that's not what we're doing." And I was like, and he was like, you know, take some frames out, make this faster. And I couldn't see it, and I had such a hard time. And I think it went like 4 or 5 passes. And of course my confidence is starting to drop, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And that guy, man, he sat down with me, and he was like, look, we know you can animate. And of course he's boosting up my confidence. He's like, look, we hired you. There's a reason why we hired you. You're good. You can do this. I'm going to show you. And he sat down and he drew on my screen and like plotted out the animation, pretty much like put a frame here, put a frame here, put a frame here. And I did that. And I was like, this is crap. I can't see any of it. You know, it's just, it's too stroby and all that. So I show it, and he's like, yeah, that's it. Now go ahead and spline that out. And I splined it out. And as soon as I splined it, I was like, oh. and it kind of clicked. Yeah, it was the little aha moment. And, you know, he helped me a lot, like certain things. And I started asking more questions like, okay, well, I see like Aaron, he's doing Scrat over here, and he's moving things like, you know, really quick. And it's like, it makes no sense to me, even though it works. So I used to, with their permission, I'd open up their Maya files and go in and just look at their curves. I'm like, how did he do that? Always with their permission. But yeah, and then that was, you know, I'd always ask why. So yeah, that transition was tough.
Very cool.
That is really cool. I got two questions, right? First thing, I think that's amazing. And that is something, you know, like this is why we do live demos at iAnimate, so you can see how the instructor works, or, you know, instructor, the supervisor, the lead, the director, whatever position they have, but you can see how they work. And that's what you did. You literally you went on your own. And, well, you asked permission, which is...
I got permission.
You got their blessing. But that says something. My question for you is, when you started at Blue Skies, like, were you animating like pose to pose, or were you layering, like you just animated like the, you know, just the body and kind of get the timing? Like, how were you animating before versus the kind of things they were teaching you? Like, what was the difference? And I think that is very important. I
think that was part of the tough transition. At that time, I don't know how it is now. At that time, everybody did stepped blocking. And coming from ILM, which a VFX world is completely different, you've got to get your shot almost 80% done before
it's like a solid first pass, right? A solid at the right timing, the weight. Yeah,
you got to have all that stuff. So I was like layer kind of more like spline blocking, all that stuff to get the physics and all that. So that was kind of how I started, and they were like, this is way too much information, and this is taking too long. Like, I was really slow. So trying to gain that eye and retrain my eye to see stepped blocking and focus more on posing than the motion.
Like the story of the pose, what you're trying to get at, right?
Yeah. Trying to get that skill honed in to where, for the last 3 years, I was just doing physics. Like it always had to be physics. And of course, we still worried about silhouette and all the posing and all that stuff as well. But it was mainly about the physics because you had to get it to a certain point before you could show the director. And at Blue Sky, of course, the director's in the world of animation. So he can see the steps. He can see, just here's 3 poses. Are they telling the story properly? Like he can see that to where, Michael Bay's never going to be able to see that. That's not,
exactly.
He needs to see it moving.
Yeah.
So that took me a while.
I think that is super important that you point that out and that you were able to learn it at like really early on in your careers, because, I deal with a lot of animators and often enough it's, the animators need to do the shot completely. And I'm like, no, like I don't need a shot. You could show me really rough. It doesn't matter which style you go, you do it in spline, do it in step, you do it, in layer. I don't mind. But what I want to do is make sure that it works early on. And the fact that you were able to adapt and that you said, like at first you were doing layer, really physics, but then you picked up a whole different skill, which many animators today, that haven't gone to certain type of training didn't have. You were very fortunate to be in that environment. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. I would say that's through my experience, I find that that's actually been a pretty good weapon that I've had, just based on, because I did go back to ILM after that, and I did a blocking pass because then now I'm used to doing steps, and some of those supervisors couldn't see, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, right." So then I could go back and I could, I could do the right thing.
Yeah.
Of course, that does come with experience and time, but it's also, I think what's great is there's so many different workflows out there that I think it's great to kind of get your toes wet in all of them and then find what works for you.
Yeah.
But the hard part is there are going to be situations where you're going to have a supervisor or a lead or a director that they can't see everything. So it's good to have that in your arsenal to be able to do that. And there's tricks around it. Like when I was first learning step to teach myself, I'd spline it out, then I'd stamp it out and look at it.
So
to kind of
you still
train myself.
You went your way, and then you're like, let me convert into a step and see if I can.
Yeah, so I could relate it.
So you could compute, understand. Reverse. Actually, you were just reverse engineering based off what you knew, and then just apply it. Yeah, wonderful. Loving this.
You said you used to do that, or was that still part of your workflow for a bit?
No, I did that to kind of train myself.
Okay.
Because at that time, it was a little bit quicker to be able to step. Because in a sense, when you're doing that, there's more forgiveness in stepped animation. But the whole point of that with a feature is, you're getting your story points across quicker. And that stuff is reading. And you may have to take a little bit longer to, the infamous, you hit that spline button when everything's stepped and everything freaks out. Which is my favorite part. Actually, I love that part.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear why and how you get across some of that here.
Happy accidents. All the time. I love it for that.
Interesting.
I'll as soon as if I'm working in stepped and I hit that spline button, I'll play blast it instantly. I won't do anything. I won't hit auto tangent or anything like that. I want to see it. And of course you'll get heads flipping and all this kind of stuff. But by watching it a few times, I'll see this little head nod, and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea.
Cool.
You know, and then I'll go in and I'll add that, even if it's on the wrong beat, but I'll see something in there that just kind of sparks an idea.
Nice.
So it's actually one of my favorite parts. I know everybody says I hate it.
Yeah, that's the part where I have to go smack myself in the face a few times, make sure get myself pumped up because I know it's going to look like junk. And
no, you guys don't. You guys love it. Come on, we love it. You know,
I like the process before blocking. I like that part, the blocking part. I like the polish that in the middle part right after, and you hit spline. It's like, oh man, confidence has to be built back up again.
Yeah. So,
how long did you stay at Blue Sky?
I was there for about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Throughout the multiple shows there, or would you catch?
Yeah, I worked on 3 shows. Well, I guess 2.5. Ice Age 2, Horton, and Ice Age 3.
Now, each studio kind of has their own DNA, or, you know, what was it there that Blue Sky that you kind of took with you during that time and maybe on after, or you enjoyed the Blue Sky DNA, so to speak?
Oh man, Blue Sky is awesome. It was the culture is phenomenal. I still have some of my best friends there now. So the culture, I mean, obviously it changes a bit, but yeah, the culture was phenomenal. Taking risk with animation. I think I learned a lot there. If you have an idea, you throw it down and see what happens, see what sticks. To where when I was at ILM, obviously it was a little bit more realistic. So like pulling frames out and playing with the timing of things. Yeah, that was one of the big things.
One thing that stood out for me with Blue Skies during that time is the use of smears and multiples, right? That was something that was like, they brought in some of that old school vibe to, and I know RealFX too, when they started off, they too went the similar route and bringing some of that. And I love that. To me, you know, when I was like, oh my God, you know, and it was hard because, you know, I learned from, you know, a traditional animator, Andy, and, you know, he'd be like, no, just duplicate the arm, just, you know, duplicate the arm, add more, like, and they were doing that. And I was like, wow, like, they get it. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, all these studios have something really original, really great, but that to me was one thing that really stood out for Blue Sky. And the fact you were able to work on these shows that was really exaggerated, and it wasn't just the arm doing, it's like you had like 6 arms, like woo, 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 and then they just run, you know. I was like, wow, that was awesome. That's what I thought, you know.
I think what was great was I'm gonna go back to the team. The team was great because everybody had their strengths and weaknesses, and it was interesting because a lot of times animators get a little selfish, you know, because I always say it's a team sport, but it's a selfish way to get a job. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, here's my demo reel, but when you're working on a movie, you're all kind of working together. And it was the first time that I felt this, like it wasn't that I needed to impress everybody. Everybody was so good that I didn't want to let the team down. So it was kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift for me. You know, at ILM, when I was there the first time, I was trying to prove myself. Of course, this was my first job, and you know, it was all about me trying to get better. To where at Blue Sky, it was more about the team rising. So we kind of leaned on each other a lot. You know, I would get a shot and I couldn't figure out a face pose. I'd walk over to Bruno's desk and like literally just say, "Hey, draw this for me," because he was an amazing draftsman. And he would draw something out, and he'd come over to my desk and like, "Hey, I can't get the weight to work right here. How would I, you know?" And I'd plot things out, you know. So it was kind of like that throughout the entire animation department. Like we all really worked together.
Let me ask you a side question. One last question on this topic is, and something that I have done over the years, and I still do with my animators, is I believe in like sometimes just like, let me drive, let me show you quick, like I can explain it, but sometimes it's just much quicker to fix the problem because I'm in the game industry and the amount of work is different compared to film. But did you guys would like let each other like just sit down at your desks, like, let me try something and just work on the animation, or was it more like verbal, doing drawovers or drawing on screen? Because back then, that's what we would do, is draw on people's screen, right?
Yeah. I still do. I still do.
Good. You kept the tradition alive.
You can ask any of my animators, like, this is my weapon.
There you go. That's right. Expo.
I
there you
will
go.
plot on your screen.
Yeah, little dots.
Oh yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the animators, it was more like doing drawings and tons of critiques. Me and it was so many of us. Like, I would send my animation to Jeff or Leaf or somebody, and man, they tear it apart. You know, it's like we didn't have an ego at all. It was just like.
But you knew it came from the right place.
Yeah,
you know, it's like,
because we were all doing that for each other. It wasn't. It wasn't that competition. It was like, hey man, here's what's messed up with it, and you'd look at it and go, yeah, you're right. Okay, cool. I'll go fix that. Yeah. The only time I really think that happened was with like the supervisors. And maybe the leads would come in and like, here, let me show you, and they'd sit down and you know, they might play with your curves or something like that. But that was pretty rare. Okay. But most of the time it was you know, it was just all of us together. It felt like just everybody was trying to improve each other.
Interesting. I'm gonna ask questions to myself now. I'm like, maybe I do it too often.
Well, there's also times where, you know, you start working and you get really intimate with your own shot, and you see things that nobody else is gonna see because you're in there messing with frames. And sometimes we would, like, I'd call somebody over just to look. It's like, look at this. And as soon as they're standing there, I get really self-conscious, and then I see everything. You know, and I'm like, okay, go away. I see,
wait. I'll call you back. Wait. Yeah.
So there's that too.
Yeah. So you said you went back to ILM, and then from ILM the second time, where to?
I went to DreamWorks. Went to PBI after that. Yeah.
What made you go back from Blue Sky back into VFX to feature again?
That was a little personal. I was getting married. And that kind of fell through. And then so I just, you know, a little bit of familiarity.
Gotcha.
You know, I was like, hey, I'm coming back, and they're like, yeah, sure. You know, worked there for a little bit, and then an opportunity came up at DreamWorks, and I really liked feature, so I kind of want to get back into it. And then I popped over there and stayed there for a few years.
Did you feel, it would seem like you'd feel very comfortable up at PDI, because from what I've heard, they tended to kind of be a little more technical as well. And so it seems like maybe the Blue Sky aspect of the animation, but coming from an ILM that kind of had that realistic, was that a nice marriage there, or am I way off base?
Yeah, no.
Be honest.
Yeah, I can tell by the pause. I was way off base.
For once, give me something, Wes. Come on, man. Give me something.
Well, I would say, I don't know. I feel like the beauty of feature was we could control the frames as animators. And on VFX you don't. You have to, which is a positive and a negative as well. Like, you know, here's your plate, and here's the camera move, deal with it, you know, and you had to come up with creative solutions. And sometimes you'd have to make some creative conceits to get it to fit inside of that camera, to where on feature, I felt like we had that kind of freedom to ask, like, hey, I need 3 more frames here to make this work. And they're like, cool, yeah, you can have that. And you're like, woohoo, you know? So I think, I don't know. I really like that aspect as well, and I like the different style. You know, to be able to, you know, do a scrat, like where he can jump across half of the forest in like 2 frames. You know, to like Alex in Madagascar, when he walked, he was a little bit more rubbery, and like just all of that kind of stuff, which was super subjective, but at the same time had a certain feel to it. So it was just a little different tools, different software.
That was before Primo, right?
Yeah, it was Emo
at the time. Yeah. I've seen it. Looked like working in Excel. a little bit.
Yeah.
I like that. Everyone got it so good now, man.
I know. They were working on Primo right before I left. Yeah, it was I got to see it, but never got to use it.
What were some of the lessons and things that you learned there at PDI? Their culture and their DNA.
Yeah, they were. I think theirs was more for me was I got to know Maya really well, and I can script. I wrote some tools like at Blue Sky. I wrote some tools, and having that kind of say mastery over a piece of software to where I got to rely on it a lot.
Okay. And
I kind of became a little bit handcuffed based on that software. So I think one of the biggest lessons, and I try to teach, whenever I'm teaching or trying to help somebody out, it's like, don't rely on the tools.
Yeah.
Like be more about the actual art and the animation. The craftsmanship. Because with the craftsmanship, you can take any piece of software and just, at the end of the day, one of my best friends, Vitor, we shared a shot once, and that was the first and the last time I'd ever do that.
He was at RealFX, right?
Yeah, this was at RealFX.
Okay, my brothers told me about him, and he said he's an awesome animator.
Oh, he's
but
phenomenal, yeah.
Crazy.
The way he animates, he's a 2D animator, like in his head.
Yeah.
But I think he's a great example of not letting the software hold you back. But at DreamWorks, obviously, I had to learn that because I had a whole new piece of software that was at least 15 years behind Maya, and I still had to pull off the same animation at the same speed.
Right.
So I think that was a big lesson that I learned there, which was fantastic. And obviously the people there were great and helped me through it. But yeah, I think that was probably one of the largest lessons I learned there.
That's really cool, though. That's a great lesson. I took a workshop actually over a year ago with Charles Schwartzman, and he's up at Pixar, and he mentions kind of something similar where he just he kind of guards on how much he uses all the tools that they have there at Pixar because he doesn't want to ever get too dependent upon that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I
mean, you're looking at pictures. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's 2D images. It is like I've had, as a supervisor, I've hired some people from larger studios that when they came in, they couldn't do it because they relied so much on tools that they had.
Yeah.
Like even the little things like Tween Machine and things like that, to where they got so dependent on that stuff. Yeah. Or just like even before the auto tangent tool was available in Maya, at Blue Sky, we had I think we called it auto converge or something like that, to where we kind of do eases for you.
Okay.
You just kind of assign it to a hotkey, but you get so used to that you forget how to actually do it. So,
or to even look for it, right? You're like, I thought the computer would do it for you. You're like, no, exactly. Don't ever do that. Like, hey, you know what you're animating, man.
Yeah, got to control every key.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was one of the bigger lessons there.
That's great. I think it's a great lesson. I know we've got a lot of professionals, but obviously we're online animation school. And so I know we get a lot of students too. And I remember, starting on a Maya, probably 2012-ish or something like that. So that was, I didn't have Tween Machine. I didn't, Animbot, things like that. And which, I use heavily still, but still at least learning on a piece of software prior to that kind of stuff would be probably very beneficial before you jump into some of that kind of stuff.
And that, I'd almost say, scarred me to a point to where now, like I don't use Animbot. I don't use hardly any tools. Like even the animation layers, like, no, don't use those. I don't. Yeah. And I have a lot of friends that are like, oh yeah, all you gotta do is this, and this, and you got it done. I'm like, or I could just move this key over here.
That's funny you say that. Sometimes I show a bunch of tricks, which you could do it in layer, but just take the curve and move it up. there's your offset right there.
Or there's tricks like, for overlaps, like you just take that curve,
move
copy
it over,
put it on the next joint, put it on the next joint, and then, offset it. And I think, but again, I'm pretty old school when it comes to that stuff. Like IK spines. I have a shirt a friend of mine got, it says FK for life. Like, I don't like IK spines. Just, and so.
You need to put that on one of your old vehicles.
I like that. We should make it. Right? We should make it
paint it on one of your old vehicles. That'd be real cool.
FK for life.
FK for life.
Yeah, that's good.
I want to keep on this path with some of the projects that you've worked on and some of the studios, but just out of curiosity, what is your workflow? How do you approach a shot?
Oh man, talking about it. It's different depending on the shot.
Okay. Can you give us an example on when you might use one particular method and for a quick acting or maybe a subtle one or?
Yeah, if I'm doing like an action shot, I'm usually more, I film reference for a lot of stuff. I like mirrors. I like to get up and perform it myself so I can feel it, like where my weight is, all that kind of stuff. So I really rely heavily on that kind of prep. But when I get into Maya, usually on an action shot, I'll do a little bit more kind of straightforward animation.
From your reference though?
From my reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll go in and I'll put like my key poses. Then I'll really think about the in-betweens and where the weight is. And
so do you put a key pose on the time that you want, or you put a key pose on like every single frame and then space it out? Like
I usually do it on 4s.
Okay, just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the timing. Just every 4 frames a key pose. Okay, that's fine. It's really important to. Well, for me, it's like I'm kind of scratching and see like, okay,
so it doesn't matter where it is in real life. I just use 4s. 4s or 5s, just so I have a little bit of like, okay, so what's my in between pose look like? Then I'll go in and I'll stamp that and I'll tweak that to get the weight right, and then I'll move everything to be back on 5s again.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of do that until I get the poses I want. Yeah. And then I think about the in-betweens for that. And then I'll start working on the timing. And that's just, but I stamp everything and I start moving things around to get that timing. Yeah. Then I start breaking down. Right. Then I'll start bringing down where I need more information.
Right.
That's how I kind of approach, I guess that's kind of how I approach most everything inside of Maya. My prep is different for everything, like dialogue. This is the way I do dialogue. I'll think about the shot, where it lands inside of the sequence, and what the purpose of the shot is. So what's the emotion that's supposed to be coming across. Then I get into like what's the subtext, like what's going on. I'll write out the line dialogue, and then I'll make up in my head what they're actually saying. Like
so you give yourself a different line. I think that is so important. Like not enough animators do that. I believe they just get the habit when you're like I did it when I was a young animator. I get the line, I do the line, and then it's like it works, but then your director is like lacking flavor, right? So
I always write down what the subtext is. Like if they're saying sure you can go outside, that's like no, you're not going outside. So what I'll do is I'll write down what they're actually saying, and then I'll film reference of that. Like I won't film reference of
the actual dialogue,
the line. I'll film reference of the sub, because I'm not a trained actor. I can't say the line at the same time doing the subtext. I'm not that good. So I'm an awful actor. So I'm going to perform whatever it is I'm saying. So that's the way I'll do that.
That's very cool. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, but I'll break down the dialogue, like literally line by line, everything. I'll put the inflections into it and like, what do they mean by this? I break down the line of dialogue, and then I'll film the reference based on that.
Do you gravitate towards any particular, if someone were to typecast you, do you gravitate towards subtle acting, action, comedy, or do you like the range?
It changes, man.
Okay, depending on your mood.
I've been doing this for too long, man. It just change, whatever.
I mean, I like the realism. I think right now I'm kind of getting more into like the pushed realism.
Okay.
Meaning like
hyper realistic or
more
push.
hyper real, kind of like your in betweens are pushed more so than saying screw gravity. Like keep the gravity, but how far can you push it? Like I really like that stuff right now. But I mean, you saw the Willoughbys. I mean, that's a whole style in itself. Book of Life was something different. All the way. Yeah. So I like it all. It just depends on my mood. It's kind of like, what's your favorite movie? It's like, well, is it Wednesday? I don't know.
What was the last thing I watched, right?
So how was it working with Chris Pern? I mean, he's a buddy, and did you get a chance? How was it? Like,
it's pretty awesome. He's great.
Yeah. He loves a Canadian whiskey, just so anyone knows. If you're going to do an interview, right, bring him a Canadian whiskey. I'm telling you right now. But don't say it. When you bring it to him, he's like, wow, I love this stuff. And he's just say, Rick says that this will give me an opportunity. You're on your own. Right? Should I say that? Should I share that? Chris, I love you, brother.
No, Chris is fantastic. He was a lot of fun to work with. He was. I'm the way I run a team. I really feel it's important to have a conversation between the director and the animator, because the animator's doing it, and it's the director's vision. And as far as leadership, we're just there to help facilitate that. I'm not a fan of like, you have to get it approved by your senior, by your lead, then the supervisor, then, and I just think that it needs to be diluted
sometimes.
Yeah, it gets diluted. And I think the artists, half of what makes our job fun is, coming up with the idea and the director loving it.
Right.
I mean,
and getting that feedback, like, I love that idea. And you're like, my goodness, the director loved it. Yeah.
That was my idea that's in the movie,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. No, I think it's important. And I think the director too knows that if I can get them to commit as much as I'm committed to telling the story is
gonna get better.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. So we would, in dailies, we'd have discussions, between the artist and the director and myself, and like we would just chat about like, this is what we think it is, and then the animator would be like, okay, cool. Hey, I was thinking this. It's like, oh, that's a cool idea, and then it would just go back and forth. So he was really big about that. Like we would rap about ideas, and of course sometimes he had very specific things that he was after.
Right.
He's got the big picture idea of what he needs done, but at the same time, like, it was always great because it was always a conversation. Yeah.
Now, were you at BRON Animation before the project picked up, or did you go over there for this one?
I actually went over there or over here for, I think animation was at 10% done.
Okay.
So luckily, like one of my buddies, Eric, was one of my leads on Book of Life. I was in London at the time, and I was wanting to come to Vancouver, and I was like, hey man, I'll just come over and just animate on the show. And so Rob Lodemeyer was the supervisor, and he got promoted to co-director. So they needed somebody to take over. So
worked out nice. Very cool. Yeah, we actually had quite a few of our alumni work on that. Roy Stein, Martin Smith, India. I forget her last name off the top of my head. And they were getting to talk about it and just said it was a blast to work on.
They did a good job, right?
Yeah, they did great.
Good. We got to make sure,
I mean, you saw the movie, right?
Represent.
Yes.
Like, hey.
I got to tell you, this is the style and the look caught my attention right away. The premise of the story was very different at first. It was one of those ones when you kind of start looking at it, kind of like, this is odd, And in prep for this podcast here, I just dove into it, and it was a blast. I love the humor. I thought the style of animation was just so much fun. And you can just see that, like you said, you have an artist who's going to own that. And you can see where that it looked like they were trying to do, hey, how can I make this really shine on the show, So it was a lot of fun. Yeah. Anything particular during that project? Because what was your role on that one?
I was a supervisor, so I was head of animation.
Now, had you been head before on some of this stuff, or was this your first?
On Book of Life.
Okay.
I was head on that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so this wasn't your first rodeo as far as the head. Anything different from this studio versus working at RealFX on being a head of animation?
Yeah, I mean, the largest difference for me was on Book of Life. I was in from the beginning, so setting up the department and all that kind of stuff, I had more of an influence. And when I came here, we had to make some adjustments, and there were certain things already in play that I just kind of had to deal with. So that was different, but I got to be honest, the team was phenomenal. I absolutely expected me to come in and everybody's like, well, this is the way we do things, kind of having that attitude. But when I got here, everybody was really excited and pretty stoked, and we made some changes, and everybody was 100% behind it. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, they were very different, mainly because of the scenario.
Okay. Was there any particular challenges working on a film like this that was going to Netflix per se versus, the theaters? I don't think it looked in quality lowered at all. I think that it was
absolutely not.
Looked amazing.
Honestly, I don't think. I think what was great was Netflix came and kind of gave us a little presentation that I think was really inspiring. They talked about how, because they're a streaming service, they're not about your opening weekend. They're not about that box office. They're about content, because everybody's kind of an individual out there. So instead of trying to dilute something down to where it hits more people, they're okay with having a little bit something more of a niche, and because they need content for that
gotcha
audience,
that's interesting,
which was really cool. So it kind of gave us that freedom to let's push the animation style. Let's really play with it. Which, they had made a lot of those decisions even before I came on. But it was pretty freeing to, it's like, what can we get away with, and of course, Chris has got that, comedic timing and energy, and that
so funny.
that sensibility that, we would just go crazy. I mean, there's still a company, you still have the execs that you still have to deal with.
Right.
But, for the most part, they felt a little bit more hands off than what I was used to.
Okay.
Which was really nice. Because they did talk about that. They were like, we can have super niche things, because once it's on there forever.
Yeah.
It's not, it's content, and it's a Netflix original. So it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Any particular highlights about working on something like this?
I think the style itself was a pretty big highlight. It was fun to, I like puzzles, and I felt like it was a big kind of puzzle. We got to tell the story, and we got to get the motion to read, but what's the least amount of frames that we can do that? And everybody kind of had their own take on it. And which gave people certain strengths, and we obviously cast them those styles of shots. But yeah, that was fun, and especially when I first got here, that learning curve for that, and then taking that and trying to push it a little bit further.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Did you get to animate much on it at all, or were you too busy having to oversee?
Dude, I every show I supervise, I try my hardest. I got one shot. I did the shot where the cat's coming across in the dart and does a little thing and then jumps up and punches the hole. That's the only shot towards the end of the movie.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that took me a long time, and then they made some changes, and I had to give it to Kane, one of the leads, to clean it up, because I just didn't have time. But I always try to be on the box.
That's cool. I think it was Bill Haller who we had talked with, and I think he said something to that effect. So that way he always kind of has his foot grounded still in production, where he feels he can empathize, so to speak, with the artist. You don't feel like you've lost that, So yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, both. I remember on Book of Life. I had one shot on that took me like 3 months. But of course, I'm the boss, so
yeah.
Production
more time.
loved me. Yeah. Production loved me. But I agree. Both Bill and I and Louis as well. Louis on there was one of my supervisors on there too. And yeah, I made it a point, like we all had to do a shot or two. Those guys did a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, it's important because, playing with the rigs, finding out what's really wrong with the rigs so you can help out, and, because your animators are animating, they don't have time to fight those battles. But as long as I actually understand what's going on, then I can fight those battles better.
Okay.
And also the importance and the priority of it as well. Like, systems crashing and, it's the same thing. It's like, I'm not going to ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do.
Right. Right.
So,
Was there anything that was particularly unique set up with these rigs, or did you guys use a lot of PSDs to help with the shapes and things like that? Or,
no, I think, it was, the rigs were a little tough at times. But I think for the most part, we had a small team. It was, you're painting me into a corner here.
We ask the tough questions of this podcast.
I know, right?
That's right.
They were rough, but I think towards the end we really came up with some nice solutions to help out. We ended up having a pretty big tech anim team that would help us out with certain things that we couldn't quite get. Then they would go in and do that stuff for us, which was pretty great.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, it's, I don't mean to paint you in a corner, and I don't mean that, you don't ever want to throw someone under the bus, but part of it is just the nature of the beast, where you've got a budget, you've got deadlines, you've got, and it is what it is. It's at the end of the day, you get it on the screen, and to make it look like none of that was ever an issue, so that's why I was just kind of curious. Did you have the luxury of, the rigs being built in, or did you have to work some of that afterwards or things like that? So just kind of always curious on how.
There's a lot where, you try to do your best guess at the beginning of a show of what you're going to need. And then, like this character is a tertiary character, and then,
story changes a little bit.
3 months later, all of a sudden he's a main, and they're like, he doesn't have a face rig. They're like, yeah, well, you got a day to do it. Go.
You're like,
crap. Or the other way, it's like you spend months on one character, and then all of a sudden their importance starts to drop, and then they end up being a background character. And like, that rig's amazing. We're never going to touch it, but it's awesome.
Sounds like marketing. It's like, we're going to do this. Oh, by the way, extreme close up, and you're like, oh, right. You look around everywhere. Okay.
That's making a movie.
Yeah. That's kind of why I asked that too. Like I said, maybe it didn't have the big budget that sometimes, a Pixar or DreamWorks would have. But you learn to get creative, and you learn how to solve these puzzles. And like I said, at the end of the day, you look at that film, and it was really, really beautiful all across the board.
Well done. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Glad you like it. Yeah. I'm really big on, the later into my career, I guess, I really like the a little bit lower budget films, because I feel like that it forces you to be creative.
Okay.
I think
Rock Dog and.
Well, I think like Book of Life is, I think, really, really beautiful, and we came up with tons and tons of shortcuts and tricks and stuff just to get the look that we wanted, and I'm really proud of that. And then I go and see Coco, and it's beautiful, but when I go see it, I just see money pouring out.
It's like, they had time, they had money.
Right, they had time and money. Not to say that they didn't
ramp up,
and not to say that they didn't have their hardships. I know they did.
Right.
I worked on those films. I have a lot of friends that worked on those films, and they're no film is really easy.
Right.
But it's just a different type of box that you have to fit into.
Right.
And you're dealing with a $25 million budget versus 125. There's a lot that you can get away with.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things with Book of Life. Like, I feel like we solved a ton of problems, and like Manolo with his square arms, depending on, like, the animators really had to plan out the way he was or what he was going to do, because what he was going to do is how you would animate his arms. Because if you raised his arms, you couldn't move them forward. So if he's playing his guitar, you actually had to have them forward first. And, so you had to animate kind of backwards just because of the design of the shoulders.
Mm.
So you had to be a little
thoughtful.
Plan.
Yeah.
So it's just those creative boxes. I really like that, because I think that's where a lot of creativity comes from.
Yeah.
You have this box and you got to fit in it. And it's like, all right, how can we do that?
So now you're still up at BRON then, I'm assuming by your answer earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys working on something for Netflix again, or something you could talk about? Or
no, I can't really talk about it, but
okay.
we're switching gears a little bit, doing more of an episodic venture, and we're playing with the Unreal Engine.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which is pretty interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
You're talking Rick's language right now on the.
Hey, well,
comes from the gaming side here.
Yeah, like animation is animation, and then there's so much aspects of animation, but what I see we're going with the future, that's why iAnimate, we've been doing the Unreal workshops, and we've been doing a lot of different things. That's why we were I think we were the first also, first for games, first for motion capture. I really see the future, and I like when we're ahead, but I love where the feature TV and commercial is going, and using the Unreal Engine to make it real time. Like, it is a beautiful future. That's what I believe it. I really think it's going to be amazing, and we're going to start seeing that. Maybe three years from now, we're going to really see the advantage of it. But the fact that you guys are doing that, that's awesome.
That's very cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've been really impressed with it. It's impressive.
Yeah, you see the eyes lit up. It's like, I didn't know we could do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's neat.
So,
awesome.
Any particular films that you've just throughout your career here, like I mentioned, Megamind is one of my all-time favorites. Any other films that we haven't talked about that just are kind of staples in your career here? I know you brought up Book of Life multiple times for the ability to work with Jorge and the creative boxes that you had to work in there, but any other ones that we haven't hit upon yet?
Book of Life was amazing. I think Willoughbys is great. Horton Hears a Who. That was a lot of fun. I loved working on Terminator. That was great.
Okay.
There's been a good handful.
Yeah,
I mean, the list is awesome, right?
Yeah. I think just a little like Animators moment. I was working on Terminator, and I did the shot, this Terminator's Salvation, where he kind of decapitates him, and then he does the infamous cheesy fall on his knee and fall over. I was working on that, and they asked me just to block it out so they could sim it. And I did the blocking of it, and ended up staying late that night, just kind of animating it out just because I wanted to.
It's like, I want this shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I want it.
And I blocked it out, sent it to them, and they started simming it and stuff. And then I just kind of want to animate it out. So I'd stay late and work on it. And then my supervisor at the time sent it back to me because he wanted me to do some adjustments on the blocking so they could resim it because they couldn't get the sim to work right. Yeah. So then I was like, I animated that. And he's like, why'd you do that? This is really hard, and da-da-da. And I showed it to him, and it was exactly what they wanted. And I was like, yes. Yeah, exactly. Like,
what time
Very
is it?
nice.
What time is it?
Take that sim calculation.
Yeah.
Always good when you can do that.
Very nice. Very nice.
That was fun.
Any advice for up-and-coming artists?
What is the one thing you wish someone told you when you first started, or something like before you were felt like, hey, I'm on the right path? Before that point, anytime from the very start to that point, what is the one advice or that two advice that you wish someone told you early on?
I think it's okay not to be the best. I think that's
nice.
That's I think that's important, and know that you'll get there. I think that's the hardest thing, because usually whenever I have a junior animator, I've usually got to pull them aside at one point, because they do this thing, what I call woodshedding, where they'll, again, I did it. So I'm not placing blame. I totally did it. Where, they get a shot, they go in, and they kind of go into their woodshed and work on this thing. And then, 3 or 4 days go by and you're like, I haven't seen this shot. Because what they want to do is do the shot and go, ta-da! Yeah. And it's like, that's great, but he's supposed to walk through that door, And I think that, to me, it's like you gotta, in a sense, not to sound rough, but you kind of got to get over yourself and know and have that thick skin. And you're going to put something up that's going to get torn down. Yep. So the earlier you can do that, the better off you'll be. Yeah. Via, taking notes, quality, you'll have more time to polish, like all that stuff will work out in your benefit. Yeah. It's a tough pill to swallow in the beginning, because at least for me, it was because I was so worried that every time I put my shot up, I was being judged. Yeah. And it still feels that way, but you got to know that at the end of the day, you're hired there, so they know you can do it. And as long as you're staying on track, you're fine. Yeah. So have that confidence to show early and show often. Yep. I always tell my team that. I'll say it over and over and over, but I think that's one of the biggest things is don't woodshed. Don't think you're going to come out of the barrel and just go ta-da, and it's going to be amazing. And I know you got it in your head. When you're walking to dailies, oh man, it's going to be great. The director's going to look at this and they're going to laugh, and then they're going to turn around and everybody's going to stand up and clap for me. It's going to be amazing.
Put you on their shoulders.
And walk out. It's not going to happen. No. No. So the earlier you can get something up there to make sure you're going the right direction, everybody's going to be happy, because at the end of the day, everybody wants the best image on screen and as quick as possible, because we got to finish the movie. Yeah. So, or the game, or the TV show, or whatever, it's got to get done. So the earlier you can show and swallow that pride and know that they're going to destroy it, the better off you'll be.
What if I told you this, right? And I want you to give me your honest, brutal opinion, right? Just like be hardcore. I tell animators, you don't own the shot. However, you can choose the venture, the journey of getting there. So don't think the shot is yours, but make that journey, that learning or getting there, yours. That's what you want to own. It's the journey, the venture of creating animation. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, all right, high five. And then and they're like, yes. And I'm like, oh, so I don't own it, but I gotta enjoy it. Like, I've been saying that for a while to my animators. I want to know your honest thought on that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, I try to remind everybody that, it's not your movie, it's the director's. They have hired you to help fulfill their vision. Yeah. So the best thing you can do is try to make their vision the best you can do. Yeah. Trying to change it because you have a different aesthetic or you disagree with something, it's not up to you, it's theirs. And I've told a handful of animators that I've had to sit down and have a chat with that, imagine you're the director and you've got this grand idea and you're dealing with an animator that thinks it should be something different. It's hard to deal with. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's about that journey. It's about getting better. It's about getting that shot to look the best it can under the director's vision. That's what it is. It's like myself, going from ILM, I was a realistic style animator, and I had to learn that that's not the style of Ice Age 2. I mean, there were moments for that, and trust me, I got a lot of those Manny walking shots. But I still got some scratch stuff too. It's that's the thing. It's like it's not your movie. You're being hired to help fulfill a vision. So own that.
That's great. Very cool.
Thank you. Very good. Cool. Thank you.
Well, Wes, we really, again, appreciate your time. We enjoy this. We know our audience enjoys this. It's always just, like I said, a neat opportunity to get to talk with people in the industry. And so, yeah, just again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So much. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, if you haven't checked out the Willoughbys, check it out. And with that, we're out.